Hi everyone, welcome back to our MedTech Lives. Have you ever thought about working in the medical device industry, or are you already in the industry and want to understand how to progress, get better, or even like what's next? There's never been a better time to work in the medical device industry, as over the next 10 years, we're going to see a greater demand for healthcare across the world and an acceleration of technology in spaces such as AI and digital products, which are developing and being approved for use. So welcome everyone to our podcast, in which we interview veterans of the medical device industry and learn about their career journeys, what they're proud of achieving or being involved in, and what were their challenges that they had to overcome. We shall also touch on different areas of medical device, illustrating the huge variety of careers in this wonderful industry. This podcast has evolved from a live annual MedTech Day we used to provide for a major European business school. We are your hosts,
Karima
and Kash Ikram. And today we are honored and delighted to welcome Bill Peine, who has over 20 years of experience in the med device industry. Today we're going to be covering topics regarding R&D, engineering, research, patents, all stuff that's done in the development department. So don't forget to subscribe, love to see your comments and questions for us and for Bill. And without further ado, over to you.
Bill. Welcome, Bill. We are very happy to have you. And
yeah, great to be here.
As we always start is, can you tell us a little bit about your career? What has inspired you to start a career in engineering?
Yeah, no, it's. I think I was born lucky in the sense that I had parents who inspired me, who fostered my curiosity. And my mother was a nurse, and my father was an engineer. So it's no doubt that why I ended up in the medical device industry as an innovator.
It was fated.
It was, and they also, fostered my curiosity. I was one of those kids that took things apart and sometimes got them back together. But I was always inspired by robots. Maybe it's Star Wars that triggered it, but I just loved being able to build something that could interact with the world, be able to make something that had software and electronics and motors. And so as a kid, I remember my parents bought me a subscription to radio electronics to teach me about electronics. And there was an article in there about this toy made by Radio Shack called the Armatron. And they gave instructions on how to hook it up to your Apple II Plus computer. That kind of dates me. And I think that experience of just being able to get into the details of robotics inspired my career, right? And I knew that I wanted to study electrical engineering because that was the up and coming thing, and I wanted to make robots. And so I went to Purdue and studied electrical engineering and robotics, and my career's taken off from there. So I again, it comes back to being in that right environment that really set me off in my career.
And why Purdue? Is that, I know a lot of people in the US go to universities their parents went to, but was Purdue because it was mainly in that field that you're interested in, or was there?
I mean, some of it is casual, like you said. Yeah. That's where my grandfather and my grandmother graduated, and my parents, and so yes, there was some black and gold in my blood for sure. Yes. But it's also an amazing engineering school, which I had the pleasure of later in my career coming back and actually being a professor there, and so that was a great honor. So it's both. I think it's the family connection, but more importantly, it's an amazing engineering school.
But how was the situation at the university at that time? Was robotics still brand new? Did you discover it together with the professors, or could they teach you already something?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot happening in robotics clearly over the 70s and 80s. So it was a pretty well-established field, but the area of medical robotics didn't exist at all at that point. So there were no classes about sort of biomedical related applications of robotics. And I think that when I finished my undergrad, one thing that I realized is I loved multidisciplinary work. I liked finding places where you were crossing the boundaries between disciplines. Robotics is that inherently, but I was really craving sort of the biology side of it. Yeah. And that inspired me to go to Harvard and work on that in my PhD. So.
Wow. What was your PhD about?
So it was focused on haptics and
Okay.
using haptics for, which is a sense of touch, using that to address minimally invasive surgery. So as you know, and you clearly know, Cash, is minimally invasive surgery uses these long instruments that go through ports, but you lose that sense of touch, right?
Yeah.
That's a very important part of medicine, connecting with a patient, but being able to reach in and feel the tissue, to
Yes.
tell the health of it, to localize nodules, for example, in the lung. So my project was working with several clinicians, thoracic surgeons at MGH, to develop technology to localize cancerous lesions in the lung during these types of procedures.
Yeah.
But I also got very actively involved in the surgical robotics community, which was just taking off at that point.
Yeah. Haptics, for me, haptics have been like magic, right? Because, your PlayStation hand controller, when you vibrate, right? That's the most basic form of haptics. But when some of these surgical tools, you actually feel like it's your fingers squeezing the tissue.
Yes.
And that's like magic. When I first tried it, I was like, well, how on earth are they doing this? This is just incredible.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And an area that we haven't really fulfilled the dream yet is related to also is cute, sort of subcutaneous sense of touch, like distributed pressure information, how you can grab a hold of something and tell that it's a smooth surface or there's a corner there. That's what your skin does so well. And if we could bring that back to surgery and be able to, that would be truly inspiring. And some of the research that I did at Harvard, we actually commercialized that after I graduated. Several of my lab mates and I started a company selling distributed pressure sensor tactile sensors.
Right.
And one of the highlights of my career, I would say, is the fact that we took some of that technology, applied it to, they called it esophageal manometry. So this is a probe that goes up your nose, down into your stomach, and then they have you swallow water, and you can measure that pressure wave as you're swallowing, and you can start to detect swallowing disorders, which affect a lot of people. And being able to see that and visualize those as waves was a completely new way of doing it. And so that technology, actually, we took it to market, and it got bought by a few companies, and now it's owned by Medtronic. So it's fun to see one of the projects that I worked on way back still in the sales bag of the Medtronic sales team.
That's incredible. Silke has some experience with that type of technology, right? From your days of putting balloons in patients' stomachs.
Yeah, but we purely did it manually, so there was no robot involved.
No.
Maybe it would have helped. I don't know. Could be.
I've known some other engineers and people we know, like Philip Barrard, who we're hoping to get onto this as well. He left a Swiss university and set up a company as well. Is this something that you guys are encouraged to do? You get that right coaching and when you're at university? Because when I studied biology, we were never encouraged to go set up a company, right? But it seems like in the engineering departments, it's much better.
It does. It also depends on, again, your environment. So being at Harvard, MIT, they had a spirit of innovation. They wanted to generate IP. It was a big push from universities in the 90s and into the 2000s to really, that's the best way to do technology transfer out of the lab, is to have startup companies do it. So certainly there was a lot of encouragement from the academic side. But also some of it is maybe we were, I'd say maybe blissfully naive. Sometimes starting a company, it's people who've done it know how hard it is to do it. And fresh out of school, everything is possible. And I think that's actually a great time to explore, to be at startups when. Actually, I love startups at any point of your career, but I think that's part of it too, is we didn't know what we didn't know, and we just went for it, and we were successful, right? So
that naivety and of youth is so fascinating. I had a similar experience. I worked for a startup magazine, and I went to the biggest distributor, WH Smith, in the UK. And not knowing what it was, I asked for this. My boss said, "Oh, go ask for this number, right?" Let's say it was 30,000, which was the equivalent of the best-selling magazines at the time. And I went there and I asked for it and I pushed and I worked hard and after 3 hour meeting, I got it. I walked back. My boss said, how on earth did you get that? Looking back, it was purely because I didn't realize what I was asking, the size of what I was asking for. I had no clue. I should have walked away with the 2,000, not a 10-time amount. But sometimes that naivety, energy, youth, strength, it all works in your favor, right?
It does. It does. And I think that's an important part of
Yeah.
a lesson learned for me is to
Yeah.
keep that spirit alive.
Yeah.
To have don't let the fear of the unknown prevent
Yeah.
you from trying something, from doing something. And,
Yeah.
and again, it comes back to, my upbringing. One of the things my dad did as well was he's like, okay, I think learning about cars would really help you be, those
Okay.
are complex systems, but the ones today are really hard to work on. So we
Yeah.
bought a 1940 Plymouth and I rebuilt the engine
Wow.
and that was a fantastic experience for me.
Yeah.
But it also helped me have that spirit of like, I don't know how this works, but I'm going to take it apart. I'm going to ask
Yeah.
people. I'm going to figure it out. Well, now the days of the internet, podcasts, you can learn so much, right? And so I think that spirit of saying, I don't know all the answers, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to succeed. Just start learning, start at the beginning and figure out what are the major things you don't know and then answer those on the way. And I think that spirit also translates into how I manage R&D programs. Like I think about what are the things I don't know? What are the things I need to discover? And I build early prototypes or I build test systems again to learn the unknown.
Yeah.
and then you start to put your arms around it. You start to understand it, and you can have a much better end result. But that first stage, there's a lot of ambiguity, but that's where the beautiful problems live. That's where you can change the world. Is nobody else has done it yet, right? So it takes that spirit.
Yeah.
Bill, you just mentioned end result. When you are engineering a product, how and when do you decide now it's good enough to go to the market? We are ready to hand it over to the marketing and sales team.
Yeah, I think that's a tough answer to know. But they say the safest medical device is the one that you never launch, right? But it doesn't help anyone, right? So knowing what level of risk is acceptable, what understanding, because you want to get something to market as quickly as possible, but it takes a lot of effort clearly to go through those initial phases, define your architecture, what does the device need to do, then do the detail engineering and all the safety aspects and the testing of it and the regulatory. It takes a long time to do that. So one answer is when it's safe, right? And safe, medical devices surgery is inherently risky. So you need to understand what is that safety or the risk benefit analysis is oftentimes the way we describe it. What's the benefit to the patient? And you don't want to introduce too much risk, but you're solving a clinical problem. You're delivering a therapy. So you're bringing a lot of value to them. And it requires some level of risk. So I think that's to me, the secret is understanding, have we met that risk benefit level appropriately?
Well, and as you explained this, it comes to mind that, when I've seen engineering departments in companies, that, is not one job, right? It's not somebody sitting there figuring out how to solve stuff. There's human factor engineers, there's safety engineers, there's test engineers, there's people working at the basic end, there's people refining and testing, right? So, regardless, if you're not in the med device industry right now, but you're doing some sort of engineering type work in another company, those are completely transferable skills, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the reason, again, I started in robotics because it was multidisciplinary. Surgical robotics, the medical device field takes it to another level, in my opinion. And the real significant problems to solve,
Mm-hmm.
which has been a guiding light for my career. I always went after problems where I could make a big difference in the world,
Right.
where the product ideas were transformational. Those typically require a diversity of skill sets.
Yeah.
And to me, like that level of innovation, when you're talking about needing all the people you just said, it's like people who have more soft skills, the clinical background, the biology, the engineering, robotics, software, manufacturing ability. You have to have this, the diversity on your team that
Mm-hmm.
creates a vibrant environment.
Yeah.
It's hard to lead that group, but I often talk about, achieving not individual genius, but collective
Yes.
genius. How you can combine your skill sets to do something completely new. So
Yeah. How many patents do you have?
I'm sorry, say that
How
again.
many patents have your name on? Have you counted?
And probably over 40 at this point.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah.
That's 38 more than me. No, that's
And
that's
where do the ideas come from? Is it
yeah.
that you are talking to surgeons and you hear the needs, or is it sometimes you have an idea where you think it could be beneficial for medicine? How do you develop projects?
Yeah. I think maybe the root of your question is, how do you lead innovation?
Yeah.
How does innovation occur? And I'm a firm believer that ideas come from everywhere. I think part of the reason I love my job is I love to make connections. I like to see, how can you take an idea from one industry, twist it, solve a problem for our applications? What are the unmet needs that we have to solve on our side? And then what's the latest technology? And so I think the germs of those ideas, where they come from, is all over the place. Some of it is talking to the surgeon, understanding where are they struggling during a procedure? Where is their mental cognitive load high? How can I use, and it's not always about a product to solve it. It could be a change in the workflow. It
Yeah.
could be a software tool that you bring in that gives them better visualization or gives them an understanding of where they are in the process. It's about those user interfaces potentially, but it also could be, a whole new technology that comes in. Like an area that I'm really excited about right now is endoluminal robotics. So this is where you're able to take a catheter-like device, a long, thin device, be able to go through a natural orifice, your mouth or other orifices, and then be able to get into the GI tract and be able to operate from the inside. Rather than making incisions going through the body, why not take a pathway that gets you there through the vascular system, through the spinal fluid, through the airways? You can reach almost every part of your body using that approach, and that's going to be better for patients.
Yes.
It's going to be less painful. You're going to recover faster, and you can start to do therapy damaging the least amount of tissue possible. And so, that those ideas of how you do that have to come from, you have to have the controls technology, the articulation, you need to have the visualization. So all these, again, very multidisciplinary, and all those ideas are coming from different places, different industries, different technologies.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of it, connecting and weaving it and finding a solution that really advances medicine.
And it can be quite Darwinian, right? Because there's a lot of these concepts and ideas that go so far and then just they don't make it, right? There's and they could be through at the university stage, but that could also happen at the company stage, right?
Yeah, and if my job at the moment is I'm leading research and technology.
Yeah.
If every project we looked at and worked on
Yeah.
was successful, then I'm not doing my job.
Right.
I'm not reaching far enough. I'm not trying to do something that is really pushing the boundaries of the technology, of the integration.
So killing things that you think aren't going to work is also a major part of your role, making that distinction that, hey, this is great, but maybe it's going to be so costly at the end that it's no one's going to buy it. or
Certainly, you have to think about those things when
yeah,
don't go in saying, "Oh, this is going to be a flop,"
yeah,
but go in with an idea that
yeah,
challenges the status quo, challenges what's typically done,
yes,
and if you can't solve it because of cost issues or regulatory issues, or like, okay, you bumped up against a wall that you can't go through, you can't go
yeah,
around. I got it, right? But you learn from that, right? You learn from the process, and that makes new ideas come up that allows you to solve problems in different ways.
yeah. There's
And
what also. Go ahead,
Uh, we
Silke.
were t- we were talking about having your own company after university or being in a big company, and obviously you are in a big company at the moment. So do you feel you have enough freedom to have all your ideas in your daily workflow, or how do you describe this creativity in a setting of a big company?
Mm. Yeah, sometimes people ask me what's been the biggest challenges you faced in your career. Well, to me, technical challenges are what I live for. That's what I wanted. I want those,
Mm-hmm.
right? Bring them on, right? That's what I want. But I think one of the challenges I faced is where do I live, right? I love the academic side. I love teaching. I love the students, that pure research side of things. I love the startup world where you're working fast and you've got this like almost us against the world mentality. You're bringing something completely new, and there's challenges, and so you have to form this tight knit, cross functional. Everybody does every job kind of mentality, and you push and you try and achieve. And now at the academic side, as a professor, I really love that because I was coming up with new ideas and trying to translate what I had seen in industry toward research and solve problems that would really allow us to go to the next levels of robotics and surgery. And then at a big company, it's it's easier to launch products, right? You have more chances
Mm-hmm.
of success at a big company. And so and you have more depth of expertise in all these different areas that you can draw from. So that's a really powerful opportunity there. And so, as I said, what's my challenge? Where am I happiest? Where do I want to be? Um, I'm happy in all of them, frankly, but I've told people maybe my best job would if I was a professor in industry, right?
Yeah,
And I'm getting to do that early stage. I'm educating, I'm leading in the industry. It's not like, hey, we're in our own walls, we don't talk to people outside. But I have the opportunities to start to transform the industry of surgical robotics, and I'm doing all the technology pieces. And so I really feel like the job I have now is helping me get to that point, right?
yeah,
It's helping me be able to have money, right? That's
yeah,
another advantage of being in a big
Mm-hmm.
company. Be
yeah,
able to identify what's the future of surgery, start to influence it and make it possible for us, but also start to have the ability to talk at a larger level.
yeah.
And um,
To bringing some of those themes together. Now, I know that you've been a very successful leader of teams of engineers, right? And when they come to a big company, there are multiple departments, right? And in your career progression, you may want to leave engineering and, go into quality control, go into manufacturing, even marketing, product management, or marketing, or even sales, right?
mhm.
Um, how do you help someone in your team, or have you helped people in your team make that transition, and how do you coach them on doing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that's a really important realization that when you start off in your career,
Mm.
don't ever put yourself in a box, right? That may even if you start in engineering or you started in human factors and industrial design, or you were a manufacturing engineer, there's opportunities to jump, right? There, learn the skills, get involved. And this is where I think it's really important for you
Yeah,
to get involved. This is my advice to someone starting. Find projects that are again changing, being challenging in terms of technology, but also trying to change the world a little bit, that
right.
are transformational areas, and jump in fully, right? You have to specialize in one thing to begin with. You have to have a
Mhm.
purpose on the team, but you want, they often talk about sort of T experience, like deep in one thing, but have some breadth on lots of things, not quite as deep on the others. But
Nice.
if you get that sort of mentality going, then you see opportunities to jump in. Oftentimes you're a stronger leader, you're a stronger contributor in those other functions that you jump to because you have the other experience. You can bring that to the team. And so it's also about following your passion, right? And I've had engineers who said, you know what, I'm really interested in the clinical side of things. They loved working with the surgeons.
Yeah.
So they were able to translate that engineering mindset to become like a startup specialist for our robot, someone who would come in initially and teach the surgeons how to use our system, how to use our products, get them comfortable, up to speed. And they were funneling back ideas to us, right? So it was a win-win. It really was. And I think that's one of the other advantages of working at a big company is that you can have multiple jobs. Right? There's just so many different roles that you can take on.
Yeah. So, I mean, so coming into med device industry could lead to a role in something completely different to what you're doing today, right? It's a journey. I mean, there's the former CEO of Medtronic was an engineer, right? And he went on to become the CEO of the entire company.
It's a hero for us engineers.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's fascinating. So, there is no end to where your career could lead.
Yeah, I think so. And my field is surgical robotics, so I can speak to that most passionately. But like the telecom industry talks about surgical robotics all the time.
Right.
Why? Because it's a fantastic application, potential future application for them, where you start to do telesurgery, where you can have the robot in one location with the patient and the surgeon in a different location. That's just one example of where maybe you're in the telecom industry and you come over and you start to work on this, or vice versa.
Yes.
There's so many. I mean, engineering is engineering in many ways, and there's a lot of hard problems to solve everywhere. And so.
And then I have one other question about managing people, and then I'll let Silke jump in. But when you're interviewing somebody, someone comes in from telecoms or from cars or, the trucking industry. Are you looking for that biology knowledge or that medical knowledge in that candidate?
No, usually not, right? What I'm looking for first and foremost, I think, is curiosity, right? That fear, that lack, being willing to learn something new, being willing to jump in and say, I don't know how this works completely, but I'm going to ask lots of questions. I may make a few mistakes here, but my track record shows that I can learn something new. And then I think the other piece that I really look for is persistence. And, when I was a faculty member at Purdue, a lot of undergrads would want to come and work in my lab. And I would, listen to them. If the student came back a second time, I would listen. If they came back like 3 or 4 times, I would usually give them a job, right? Why? Because persistence is a sign of persistence.
Yes.
And right. And solving these problems. And being an entrepreneur, it's about not giving up oftentimes. You're told no a lot. You don't see a pathway to a solution, right? You could just stop right there. But keep at it, keep looking, keep understanding, right? So I think those are the most important attributes, and those are in every industry.
So lack of medical biological knowledge should not hold you back, right?
No, absolutely not. And we, like surgical robotics, I need robotics experts. I'm looking for technologists outside of our industry to bring in the new things. Medical devices, as we talked about, take a long time to bring to market. It's harder to have a new product every few years, where if you're in healthcare or in home care robotics, or if you're in industry robotics, they iterate faster in terms of product releases, and they bring in new technologies maybe a little quicker than us. So it's a great way to infuse knowledge into our industry.
So, Bill, one of the most persistent people I've ever met is Silka. So I'm going to hand over to my friend Silka. I'm glad she's my friend.
Yeah, I still being a real salesperson and having launched several products, I know exactly how it is to go out for the first time ever with a new product. And of course, you think like this is the best product on earth, and then the salesperson comes back and said, "Yeah, but the doctor said something different, and he would like to have this improved." And then sometimes the engineers say, "You need to explain better." And the salespeople say, no, you need to understand the market better. So how do you deal with this field of, let's say, positive, constructive conflicts?
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, you have to do it. You have to create that, and it's not conflict, I would say, but you those interactions, right?
Yeah.
Those very early on, right? The
Mm-hmm.
sooner the better. So when we developed Hugo, the surgical robot here at Medtronic, that was one of the things I think we did well, is we had a marketing person that participated with every engineering subsystem team. And I was leading the team developing the surgeon console. And so that was incredibly valuable because that my marketing partner was able to bring in customers, and we tested very, very early prototypes that were, just almost stick figures, if you will, of the device. And we learned from those early, right? And engineers, they love to be in those environments. They want to hear it firsthand. They want to hear, and oftentimes they'll be a worse critic than the marketing team was, frankly, but I think it's about just getting the two groups together. It shouldn't be like, hey, we designed it, we threw it over the wall. Now the feedback is like, well, you should have thought, and like, well, what can we do now? So I would say first and foremost, you have to build those bridges, those relationships, and really push them as a leader early and often, and build the bond. So
yeah. Well, I think that's why we've been friends all these years, because Bill, I think you're one of the best listeners and absorb so much from what we, the commercial guys, were telling you, and then disseminating that through your team and coming back with solutions, right, for us, which is, one of
and
your...
also the marketing and sales folks have more fun than the engineers. So
you get better toys to play with. We get an iPad, we're lucky, right? And even that's beyond most of us, right? But when I go into your labs, it's like a scene off the Terminator with bits of robotic arms here and there and open circuit boards and sensors.
Well, hopefully they won't come alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the pace of med device, and I mentioned this in my intro, is just increasing rapidly. And now AI and medical AI is coming in, right?
Absolutely.
So you got things like the Watson computer that apparently can read thousands of pages of medical papers in seconds and and even actually give diagnosis, right? It can absorb information. You've got robots all the robots today are essentially dumb, right? They just do what the operator does. So they're like a master slave. Mm-hmm. Where do you see in the future, full automation, and the reason I think about this is cars are maybe going full automation, but airplanes, maybe not, right? You still want a pilot sitting there, right? Yeah. So how do you see the next, say, 20, 40, 60 years of medical device, right?
Yeah. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
As I think of my career, when I started, we were using mainframe computers. I already mentioned my Apple II Plus computer. Yeah. I was cutting edge, right, back then. Yeah. And now, like, the level of computation that's available to us, cloud, local edge, like the one shock to me is software has become half of your team all of a sudden. I mean, It wasn't all of a sudden, but that was not the case even 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. Now, software engineers are in high demand. Why? I think because you're seeing more user interfaces, more integration, more connectivity, and that digital ecosystem enables all these advanced features. People, robotics is cool because it acts almost like a hub, right? It
Yeah.
collects a lot of data. We're sensing a lot of things. It's a piece of capital equipment in the operating room, but
Yes.
it's also all the user interfaces. It's got the haptic pieces, like we talked about, how you control those devices, the screens, so you can
Yeah.
see in 3 dimensions, the side screens, the control panels. It's a great place to integrate all these things together. And
Yeah.
this, and robotics and AI are often talked about together, right? Like,
Yeah.
hand in glove,
Yes.
because it's such a natural union where, because of what I just described. But AI and the sort of data future, that's a force multiplier. That's going to take things to a completely new level. And you ask automation, when does that come in? I don't anticipate ever in my lifetime you're going to see autonomous surgery.
Right.
It's going to be, like you said, airplanes can fly themselves.
Yeah.
Probably you don't need a pilot there, but part of it is about safety. Like, if something goes wrong, if I'm sitting in the back, I want to know that somebody can jump in. I
Yes.
think the same thing is true with a surgeon. If you're in that situation, you want an expert in the seat. You want somebody that's looking at it, understanding it. But it's also, every body, internal organs and such are different.
Yeah.
So it's not, even self-driving cars, if you're just going down the road normally, they're pretty good. It's
Right.
when you get these one-off situations,
Yes.
that's where they struggle, right? And
Yeah.
they'll get better at it.
Yeah.
But I think you're going to see more what we've seen in traditional cars of like lane departure warnings, could be critical structure identification during a surgery, or maybe you automate certain parts of it, just like you have parallel parking assist.
Yes.
Maybe suturing, that's a repetitive motion. The robot can provide better accuracy when you're doing that.
Yeah.
Or it could be, when you're backing up, you hear noises like someone's behind you. Have keep out zones within, understand where the esophagus is. That's a really delicate tissue. Make it so the robot can't go into that space without the surgeon sort of pushing through a boundary or saying, yes, I definitely need to do that.
Yeah.
I think that's where you're going to see the integration. But AI is so much more than just automation. It's also about that preoperative data, taking imaging, understanding what therapy you want to accomplish, being able to bring that into the operating room, providing it in real time, but then postoperatively being able to start to collect multiple cases and feed that back into your preoperative planning. So you can start to look for nearest neighbors and you can predict outcomes before you even do the surgery.
Yes.
It's going to be exciting to see where all this goes.
Yeah, 100%.
Bill, we have talked a lot about changes in engineering over time. I need to ask one question, being a woman. When I was in my first job, being a nurse at the ICU, we were like 2-3 women, and the rest were men, because it was high tech in an ICU. How are women represented in engineering, and is it changing?
It's changing, and I think I'll go back to where we started the conversation. And I built this Armatron robot with my computer. That was very unusual back then. But now a lot of high schools have robotics teams. They're starting to do competitions. And I think that's exposing a lot of high school students of all genders, of all, location, lots is going on. They see robotics, they get excited about it. They understand what is robotics all about. It's inspiring a lot of women to go into engineering because they realize, hey, I love this. This is something I want to do. And I think the leaders of those organizations are really advocating for that. So I think that's a huge push. So I'm seeing a lot of students who come through after, in their college career or high school or beyond, that have had those experiences. And then when you bring on the medical device aspect of it, it's like, yeah, you can do a robot, but you're also saving someone's life, right? You're influencing it in such a positive way. In many cases, it's easy for me to recruit, right? So I'm seeing advances in terms of numbers at the early stage. Where we're struggling, and I think the industry is struggling, is once you get to a certain point, once you get to like principal level engineer after 10 years of effort, we're seeing a lot of women move into different fields or step out of those technical leadership roles. And I think we need to understand why that happens. That is where I'm putting my energy and effort, is to really provide the mentoring and the advocacy for those. It's not just women. There's a lot of underrepresented people who have similar situations. So it's a really important topic. But I think, again, the healthcare industry is a place where that diversity is appreciated, and the applications are we're helping a lot of women as well. With there's a lot of but that's an area of underrepresentation as well, right? There's so much to be done, to be honest. But we're working hard at it.
There's a recent article I read in The Economist, not this week, last week or the week before, which showed that women surgeons, and I think it was a JAMA publication, women surgeons had better outcomes than their male counterparts, right? So I thought fascinating. And then imagine if you had the women surgeons combined with the women engineers, MedTech engineers, you've got a perfect situation, right? For patient outcomes in the long term. So yeah, don't underestimate the women in the surgical area,
right? Yeah. And so it, but it's a thank you for that question. It's an important topic.
Yeah.
Okay, Kish, over to you.
Oh, you're up to me. Okay, so well, Bill, we could talk to you. This could be a 4-hour podcast easily, right? Because you got so much fascinating experience with so many people. So thanks again for coming on the show. But I'm going to ask you this question that we ask a lot of people is like, what do you know now that you wish you knew then, right? Years ago, maybe when you started out and came into the industry, what is the experiences that you've picked up that you would love to pass on to people?
Yeah, it's a really tough question.
Yeah.
So and it's hard to pick three things, but
the
one that comes to mind immediately, is the role of computers and software and interconnectivity. I don't know whether anybody saw that coming in the way that it did, but if I knew what I knew today, I would have spent a lot more time developing my software skills, my software architecture skills, software development skills. It would have paid tremendous benefits down the road, right? The connections that I talk about, innovation, the fact that half of our team is software engineers now, I think that's one piece that's truly changed. So, I think another aspect that I would say that if I knew now or knew back then what I know now, I don't know whether I would have changed anything. I think I would have encouraged myself to again go after the big problems, go after the application areas where it was very multidisciplinary, and I think for whatever reason I was lucky in the sense that I wanted those skill sets, and so I would have just encouraged myself more to really go after those, find the places where you can learn the most, find the places where you stretch yourself. Don't be afraid of the challenges. It's about learning as you go, and really be that lifelong learner, as they often say. So,
yeah, that's fascinating. I think, working in the med device as an engineer coming in med device, there's so many fascinating areas, right? You could be working on joint replacement, bones of people. You could be working in placing neurotechnology inside the brain of stroke and Alzheimer patients. Nanobots are a massive emerging
Yeah.
area, right? That is coming up. It's so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
As well as working in the gut, working in the reproductive areas. It's so many different fascinating fields. And throughout your career, you could, move from working in cardiac for a few years and then going off and doing something in, in the brain, right? It's an absolute bringing all your skill
Totally,
sets
totally.
to there.
That's an untapped area of medicine, in my opinion,
Yes.
is neuromodulation and being able to. So many of our disorders, if you want to call it that, stem from chemical interactions in our brains, and
Yes.
to see some of the work that's been done, like treating Parkinson's disease, it's inspiring, right? And
Yeah.
we're still learning a lot about the brain, so there's
Yeah.
so much more to be done. It's inspiring.
So if you're an established engineer, it's about looking for those jobs on LinkedIn for med device. The top med device industries, companies are easy to find. If you're at university, how would you suggest someone looking to get into med device now?
Yeah, I think some of it is your network, right? You
Yeah,
talk to your advisors in the university, understand what because oftentimes they may be better connected to the startup world, but also go to conferences like surgical conferences, not
yeah,
academic conferences, but surgical conferences,
yeah,
and again have the courage to stick your hand out there and meet people, ask
yes,
them what they're doing, and oftentimes they'll have an area where companies are showing their products.
yeah,
Um, it's a great place to learn what's happening in the industry, and if you come in with that positiveness,
yeah,
they'll be receptive to that, and you'll learn a lot. You'll see some small companies, you'll see some larger companies,
yeah,
but also it's also about in Boston here we have a med device
yeah,
forum, right? And that's a great place to learn what's happening. So I don't know, keep your ears open.
yeah,
It's coming from everywhere, but you have to seek it too. Don't expect it to come to you.
absolutely. Fascinating. Bill, thank you so much. It's been, as always, an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I learned more about your career than I knew before. Um,
And we
and
see that even engineers who we always think are only in the lab, they can
yeah,
talk. I would like to encourage sales and marketing people to talk more
yeah,
often to the engineers, because I think it's making our life easier as well to understand your ideas, to have ideas how to sell. So we should be better connected, maybe also once we are in the same company.
I'm not
Absolutely.
sure Bill wanted me to spend more time in his lab over here. But I agree with you, yeah. But more salespeople should get in touch and understand what happens in those labs. And fantastic. It's been fascinating, hugely enjoyable, and I think extremely inspiring, Bill. And you're an extremely inspiring person, full stop.
Well,
So
thank
thank you
you.
so much.
I appreciate the time. It's been great to talk to you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Yay.